to a presentation about understanding member fees and the local levy. In this presentation, we'll go through several different topics, such as the definitions of what are member fees and the local levy, talking about the current levy amount and comparing what it is to other locals around the province. We'll go into a bit about how member fees are expended in the provincial and local association, and then discuss the process to change the local levy and what the impact of the current context has been on the local levy. So first, member fees. Member fees are charged by your provincial association, and the level of member fees are set on an annual basis by the annual representative assembly. Now, this group is comprised of hundreds of delegates from every local in the province, and what they do is they set the base annual membership fee. There's a separate rate calculation. We'll go into that for in a moment for part-time members, substitutes, associate members, members on leave. But the job of ARA delegates is to create a budget that will cover the anticipated expenses of the association in the coming year. In contrast, the local levy is organized and approved by each individual local in the province. And this is on top of the member fees that are set as the base on a provincial basis. So each local can seek permission from its membership to charge an amount in excess of the annual member fee from the provincial association. And it's a simple majority vote from the membership. This would be done at a general meeting or by an electoral ballot amongst all the members. So the current rates as of the 2020-2021 school year are, for a full-time member, $1,347 per year. For Calgary Public, your current local levy this year is $14 per month. Part-time members are charged 1.25% of their gross monthly earnings as a provincial membership fee. The local still charges a $14 per month fee to part-time members, regardless of their FTE. For substitute teachers, the calculation changes a little bit. Those folks are charged 1.0% of their gross monthly earnings as the base provincial fee, and then on top of that there's an additional 0.19% of gross monthly earnings that is distributed back to the local. Associate members, and these are folks who are not active teachers, so this could be someone like myself, a local executive staff officer, could be a university professor. Folks like that, they're assessed a simple $202.05 annual fee. They're not part of the local levy, and on leave members are simply assessed a $96 per year fee. In terms of how Calgary Public compares with other locals around the province, we're pretty much middle of the road. We rank 25 out of the 57 locals. And as you can see here, current levy is $14 per month. The highest local levy in the province is at Prairie Land Local at $31, and the lowest local levy is a $5 per month levy in Evergreen Catholic and Canadian Rockies. There is one local that does not charge a levy, and that's Lakeland Catholic. So as you'll see in this chart, in terms of rank and where our comparators are, we're not in the top 5, certainly. Calgary Public is down at 25. Some of our big urban comparators like Edmonton Catholic and Calgary Separate, pretty close to where we are. Edmonton Catholic assesses a levy of $15 and Calgary Separate is $14.50. Edmonton Public has a levy of just $10.50, but some of the major differences in those other locals relates to the number of executive staff that they employ. Calgary Public is the only local that employs 2 executive staff officers. Every other local employs, every other urban local employs just 1. So just 1 in Edmonton Catholic, 1 in Calgary Separate, and 1 in Edmonton Public. In terms of where your dollars go, as you can see here, if you look at the monthly fee that's charged that comes off of your paycheck, Most of that is is for the provincial fee, $112.25 per month. The additional $14 is your local levy. And in Calgary Public, your local levy is primarily distributed to Teachers Convention, at $8 of that going to Teachers Convention and $6 of it going to local operations on a monthly basis. Now, your provincial association, this information is certainly available and accessible to everybody who is an ARA delegate. Of course, you can also contact provincial association with these questions, but this information was released this year as part of the ARA delegate budget information package. But in terms of salary-related expenses, provincial fees are distributed. There's approximately $21 million in change that's associated with salary expenses from the provincial association. So these are your provincial executive staff officers. These are all of the clerical and support staff that are employed by the provincial association to serve its members. There is the next largest program area for spending is the discretionary or programming for members. This is about $13.4 million. And then the third highest expenditure that the provincial association has is actually the distribution of funds to locals. A portion of the provincial fee is actually rebated back to each local, and $8.7 million of the total amount of fees collected by the province goes back to locals in this fashion. And so I won't go through all of the other program areas, but those are the top three expenditure areas for the provincial association. Now, in terms of where the local actually gets money from, the transfer that I just mentioned from the provincial association represents the lion's share of the local's revenues. So $1.58 million on an annual basis is transferred to the local from provincial association. Most of the remaining revenue for the local comes from that local levy, and there's a very, very small amount that we receive from interest on investments and grants from the provincial association. In terms of how the local spends money, we're very similar to the provincial association. We have the lion's share of our revenues spent on salaries and benefits for staff employed by the local. So you see here the president, the two executive staff officers, and clerical staff. The next largest expenditure is in member programming. And there's scholarships that we offer primarily to children of our own members. There are PD workshops and professional conferences that are funded by the local for our own members. And then there's a variety of other programs and committee-related expenditures that are directly in service of members that make up the remainder of that member program area. And then there's a variety of costs for things like rent, volunteer reimbursements. So these are your local committee members, your council of school representative members, and there's a small amount for miscellaneous expenditures. And then there's a large amount set aside for governance. We have to be able to plan for annual general meetings, for council of school representative meetings, and for sending members to ARA. The process for adjusting the local levy is relatively straightforward. You adjust it in certain increments. As an example, every $1 per month that you would adjust the local levy is equivalent to approximately $90,000 per year in revenue for the local. You have to, as I mentioned earlier, adjust the local levy by the approval of a majority vote of the membership. And you would do this at an annual general meeting, or you could hold a plebiscite or referendum, which is how it's been done in the more recent past. Any adjustment that you make to the local levy through one of those processes would be implemented at the start of the next school year. So the levy amount then would typically be in place for a full school year at a minimum. Again, process-wise, you bring a resolution to adjust the levy to executive and CSR. If it's approved by CSR, you then go to a vote by the general membership. And if you have approval from the general membership, we then notify CBE of the levy change, and at the start of September, they make that adjustment on all of the members' paychecks. A recent history of adjustments to the local levy. We adjusted it in the spring of 2012 for the purposes of hiring a second executive staff officer at the local. Membership was increasing, and it was deemed necessary at that time to best meet the needs of members to hire that second executive staff. In spring of 2015, there was an additional $1 increase approved by the membership due to the rising convention costs. An additional request to approve a $2 increase to the local levy was brought to members in the spring of 2017, and that too was approved. And so you see here on this chart the change from $9 prior to 2012 on a monthly basis, all the way up to $14 now on a monthly basis since the spring of 2017. We often have been getting the question, especially since the impact of COVID, about whether the local has contemplated any changes to the local levy, and whether temporary or otherwise. And you need to know that the political leadership of your local has discussed this, but it was not terribly favorable to the idea. And the reason is that any adjustment to the levy is a permanent adjustment until a new adjustment is approved by the membership. So there would be no guarantee in that scenario, if it was adjusted downwards, that the membership would approve an increase in that local levy at some future stage. So that represents a bit of an operational risk to the local, given as we are fairly lean in our budgeting practices. Similarly, the permanent removal of $90,000+ from the annual budget would have a major impact on local programs and services. And you saw the areas in which we expend funds in a previous slide. Imagine removing $90,000 from that budget, and I'm not sure where you would do that. Of course, it may be possible, but you're going to, whatever you do, you're going to have an impact on local programs and services. So you would need to make some hard decisions about where that money would come out of and what programs you would cease to have functioning. Another question that we get is whether it's possible to do a one-time rebate or a refund of the local levy. And we're a fairly small office staff. We don't really have a process available to provide reimbursement to every member. We employ a single business manager to manage finances, and if there was going to be a scenario where we're going to have more than 10,000 financial transactions to do a one-time rebate of a small amount of money, we would need to hire additional temporary staff to facilitate that. Moreover, the banking fees would probably be astronomical in nature. For the amount of money that would potentially be rebated, it really isn't going to be worthwhile to the membership to engage in something like that. Moreover, the additional complexity of needing to track back who contributed those dollars and find them in order to pay that money back if they are no longer employed by the Calgary Board of Education would be extremely complex and time-consuming. So there are many complexities to a proposal like this that make it really not feasible. In terms of what's going on with the local levy right now, we're not contemplating any changes at this time, and no proposals for changes have been brought forward. The local is engaging in contingency planning for the possible surpluses related to underspending due to COVID-19, but the local's finance committee is largely in charge of that. If you do have ideas, however, about programs or services that would help, or ways in which we could support the members with some of the funds that might not have been spent this year, contact the local and speak with a member of your executive committee to offer that support and guidance. And that's really all in terms of this presentation. If you have further questions, we encourage you to get in touch with your local elected representatives or with office staff, and we can try to help you out. Thanks very much for your time and attention.